Mindful Money Podcast. This podcast is a weekly exploration into a new philosophy of money through psychology, philosophy, and practical wisdom. In this episode of the Mindful Money Podcast,
find what would make you happy, figure out how to do that as much as you can, and the money will come or be a byproduct of that. If you can't make money doing what makes you happy, then you're doing it wrong or you're not trying hard enough.
All right, welcome to the Mindful Money Podcast, Steve. I'm excited that you're here, and thank you for taking the time to join us.
Anytime. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem, man. So I know that you're getting your own personal brand started. I know that you have worked with some of the really popular people in the entrepreneurship field. And why don't you tell us a little bit about you and where you're headed and what you want from life?
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Steve Campbell. I went to Penn State University. I graduated in 2008. I was coming out of school, sort of looking at getting into a consulting gig. But it happened to be the Great Recession happening at the time, so it was tough to find a job. So long story short, I turned to, personal branding and social media to really just try to differentiate myself and get myself out there to try to find a job. And along my path, I sort of ran into Gary Vaynerchuk online, who was even back in 2008 was starting to already be the authority in the social media and entrepreneurial space. So I naturally gravitated towards him and ultimately decided that I would love to try and go and work for somebody like him. So I applied to his company, VaynerMedia, and I was lucky enough to score an internship in late 2010 with them, when it was maybe a 10-person company at the time, a little startup company in Manhattan. And, I've been there ever since. So I've been there for over 6 years now, and the company is closing in on 800 employees. And, we just opened an office in London, and we have offices in Tennessee and LA and Colorado. And, so I've been spending all my time since then really just teaching big brands, in Fortune 500 companies how to leverage social media in their advertising plans and do the types of things that I initially started out and set out to do in order to find myself a job, in order for them to sell their products and reach their consumers.
Nice. So what are you doing now? Is it just VaynerMedia, or do you have other stuff on the horizon?
Yeah. So VaynerMedia takes up the bulk of my time in that amount of time. I sort of gotten away from the personal branding aspect, but just in the last 6 months or so, I've pretty much, come back to that and decided that was something that I was really interested in going back to and growing. So I started a Medium publication called the Ascent, which you can find at theascent.biz. And, it's really just started as a place to document my personal and professional journey as I try to, grow up in this world and try to become somebody, become an authority figure in the social media space. And, along the way, I've had a lot of interesting people that I've met and a lot of people that have joined on board and become contributing writers to the site. And, it started taking up a little bit more of my time after work each day. So it was something that I really wanted to double down my efforts on in the new year. So I launched a vlog around it, also called The Ascent, where I'm just sort of, just speaking to the camera one-on-one and starting to interview people and, just getting people's stories out there along with my own along the way. And I'm excited to see where it goes just from everything I've learned over the last 6 years.
Nice. So what's the message you're trying to send to people with that? Or is there really one? Is it just supposed to be a documentary, or is it more you're trying to instill some kind of values in people?
Yeah. So the message really is it's sort of around redefining success. Success is one of those words that it's something that everyone sort of strives for. Like whenever anyone thinks of that word, they all sort of have something that comes to mind as far as whether that's money or fame or respect or whatever, just leading in your category or industry. So I just love the idea of, taking my idea of success and what I strive to reach and the goals that I try to reach in my own personal life, and documenting that journey of getting there. Because something I picked up from Gary along the way at VaynerMedia is that was really valuable was you look, a lot of people focus on where when you think of someone who's successful, you focus on the end product. Like you look at Beyonce now or Gary now or LeBron now. But had someone been around to document the journey of how they became who they are today, that would just be really fascinating and really interesting and inspiring content. And, in a 2017 world where, video really dominates and things like podcasts and things like that, anybody can really get in this content game and get out there. And all you need is, the right person to see something or listen to something that you've created that could potentially change your life and open up new opportunities for you. That was just something that I was really interested in pursuing because why not, and my hope for the Ascent is to inspire people along the way. And, if everyone else is trying to chase their own version of success, I would love to inspire them to document that as well. And, whether share that through my audience or through my, publication would be one means of doing that.
Of course. So there's a question we like to ask here on the show, and I'll throw it in now. I was thinking about asking you something else, like about what success means to you, but I think that I really think that this question can be a good prequel to that. So the question's this. What is the purpose of money to you now, and how has that changed from when you were a kid?
It's a good question. It's kind of funny. I have an interesting relationship with money. It's one of those things that I like to think that I rarely think about or care about money. Like when I came to VaynerMedia, I started as an unpaid intern, and it required me to move to Manhattan. So I basically had to borrow money from my family and go live in Manhattan for a couple months, just hoping that, when that time was up, that I would get offered a job. And I worked really hard at it, and I put all my energy into it. And I was lucky enough that a few months later, Gary's brother, AJ, did offer me a job. And, when he offered me the job, they weren't even looking to hire anyone. So it was really for, a very small amount. And I just didn't even care. I didn't even want to sleep on it or anything like that. I just immediately accepted that it just felt right to me and like the right move. And I saw like the long-term vision of, just happiness and opportunity that could come from a place like that. So it's really worked out and so far for me. And, it's changed my perspective on money over the years. I come from a place, it's a really small town, Newcastle, Pennsylvania, 20,000 person town. And, money can go a long way there. I have friends that have stayed there after school, after college and moved back there. And, some of them own like 2 or 3 houses now. Just because everything there's just dirt cheap. And here I am living in Manhattan, in the Manhattan area, and it's tough to get by. You have like a really interesting perspective on money when you make a base salary at an entry level job and, are still finding a way to make ends meet in a place like Manhattan, like one of the most expensive cities in the world. So it's something that I've always looked at money as, I don't want to cast it off and say that I don't care about it, because it's something that you obviously need. You got to pay the bills. And over the years, now that I've grown up a little bit more living in Manhattan, I have a newfound respect for saving money and trying to do more of those things now that things like work-life balance and traveling and things like that are more of a priority for me than they were. So yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of this tug of war between, I like to be like the rest of the millennials out there that only care about experiences and not necessarily like monetary things. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm, leaving the door open and making sure I'm making all those smart and right moves to set myself up for success, whatever that version of success is to me.
That's actually, it's funny you went right to success. What is success to you?
Yeah, so success to me is I sort of gravitate towards fame a little bit. I think, in the internet age here, I've seen so many people, especially those that have come through our office at VaynerMedia, and that have just risen to a level of fame and coined the term internet fame just from creating good content and just being persistent and consistent with it. So like, an app like Musical.ly, like when that came out, like just the top 1% of people on Musically, they all have millions of fans, and they're, if you were to look at it, it would be like 14 and 15-year-olds that are good at lip syncing music videos versus some of the actual recording artists that have found their way to that site. So I look at that, and I look at what I was talking about earlier about, all it takes is the right view or the right person to sort of see your content or consume it to elevate you to that next level. And it's an at bat that I really want to have, and I want to give my best shot at, because why not? You only go through life once, and it's something that everyone has the tools and the means to do. It really only costs your time anymore. So I sort of look at success as, somebody who's reached a level of comfortability where you're content with what you've achieved and the work that you've put in to get where you want to be, but also, whether that means money or fame or respect or whatever, you have something that you can point to as a metric that validates how you feel inside. So for me, that's, I want to meet as many people as I can along this journey, and while I'm documenting mine. And, at the end of the day, kind of like how Gary's whole thesis is about, making sure that, versus how much money you end up with at the end of your life, like having the most amount of people show up at your funeral, that type of thing is sort of what I believe in. I really believe in the whole legacy thing, and I want to, while I'm documenting my journey, I want to help redefine success for people, and along the way, I want success to be redefined for me. In that, right now it's the number of people that I feel close to, and the number of people that hold me in high regard. And that could change in 6 to 9 months or 12 months. I'm just really excited to see if it does and how.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have a really good way of delivering all of that. So that's really exciting. I can't wait to see what comes of it. But you've got this really unique, like you said at the beginning, this unique philosophy or this unique approach to money, what that is and what it represents and all that stuff. And you talked about where you came from in Pennsylvania, and then how you moved to Manhattan. And now you kind of threw this millennial stereotype out there that, you made that comment, and then you were like, well, now I'm trying to be a little bit more savvy. So in that sort of balance, or in that juxtaposition, a lot of people out there can't even see past the fact that they don't feel like they have money, or that they don't feel like they can make that difference. There is that audience out there. And from this place that you're in now, what advice would you give to those people?
The advice I would give to them is, there's no secret that to get where you want to be, it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of hard work. So, through doing this stuff with the Ascent lately, the comments that I've seen from people and things like that, and emails I've gotten, they've really been some really tangible, heartfelt things that I've gotten from some people in the community. And it's things like Steve, I understand that, you need to take time and make the time and put in the effort to achieve what you want to achieve. But I'm a single mom who works 3 jobs already and does this or that. Like, how do I, get to this level, or how do I find time to do things like that? And it's really tough. The answer is you need to find the 10 or 20% of things that you're spending your time on that you don't need to be, or you could do less of, or that you could find other people to help you with, no matter what that is. Another great piece of advice I've gotten from Gary over the years is, if you're looking to start your own side hustle, for instance, or you're looking to do your own thing, you shouldn't quit your day job anytime soon. What you should do is you should find a job where they'll pay you the most amount of money for doing the least amount of work, just so that you can continue to make ends meet and get by while you're fully concentrating on your side thing afterwards, or during, if you have the time, if it's that low lift of a job. It's really, there's just no shortcuts around it. The advice you give people is, everyone has a different relationship with money and different experience with it. It's something that we all need to get by, and whatever level of money that you need to be comfortable while you're chasing what is going to make you happy is what I think is the most important thing. So, a lot of people can be happy with very little money. It's just like you're doing something every day that you really get a lot of joy out of. And if you're doing that for a living, then you're pretty content with your life. There are a lot of people that want to chase money and just end up becoming rich. And, you lose that happiness along the way because that's your only goal is the money aspect and not necessarily the benefits that go along with it, which is enjoying the journey. Absolutely. So I guess that's the piece of advice that I would give is find what would make you happy and figure out how to do that as much as you can. And the money will come or be a byproduct of that. If you can't make money doing what makes you happy, then you're doing it wrong or you're not trying hard enough.
So for those people that kind of have this philosophy about being happy and, I just want to live and live a happy life. And then they're not monetizing that. I mean, that what you just said, I mean, it's they're either not trying hard enough or doing the wrong thing. Do you think that that's the biggest challenge that some of the people in our society face in terms of making ends meet, or is there's something deeper there? That's all. Mm-hmm. So
I think the biggest challenge that faces a lot of people is fear. I think it's very easy to sort of just, adopt this system of I need to go to school and I need to get this piece of paper, and then I need to find the 2 or 3 jobs that this piece of paper is meant for, and then I need to do that for the rest of my life. And you don't really consider happiness at that point. I think a lot of it is we sort of like jump into these things really early in life for us, like where you're like, you don't really know what you want to be when you grow up at the age of 18 or 20. I mean, I tell people I'm 31 and I still don't know what I really want to be when I grow up as a joke. But it's interesting because I think that allows us to be, comfortable with just settling for what is normal and not chasing for what we really want. And I think that leads people to, sort of forego their dreams and ease off of the chasing the happiness piece and more so towards, I just need to stay in my lane and work my way up the ladder, and I'll get, intermittent raises along the way and make money that way. Whereas, the people that really are like of the entrepreneurial mindset sort of understand that scrappiness that's involved in the hard work and like just making things happen. Like, if you have a monetary goal that you want to hit, like, there's ways to just make it happen. If that's just starting out by taking all the things in your house and selling them on eBay to get like a little, extra funds to play around with and do things that way, then great. If it's, going out and getting a second job, then that's great too. But I think that there inherently is this way of, recognizing what would actually make you happy and then putting in the effort and the will to actually just attack it and pursue it. Because, you can chase money, and a lot of people do. And, at the end of the day though, you realize that what you should have been, or maybe should have been chasing, is happiness instead. Because when you're doing that, then you're content for far longer before the money gets there than, when you're not. So when you're not doing something that makes you happy, you get that itch of like, I better be getting compensated monetarily for this, for my time, because I'm not enjoying myself. And, it's effort that I'm putting in, and, you just want to see that reward at the end of the day.
So what changed for you? Like, at what point did you know what made you happy and what you wanted to go after?
For me, I feel like I'm lucky in that where I grew up in the small town that I lived in Newcastle, I just inherently had that in my DNA. Like it's a kind of town where nothing great really ever happens there. I mean, the people, the friends of mine that still live there, I mean, it's a nice little town, but it's, my mom told me when I left college that, hey, I love having you around here, but if you don't get out of here soon, you're going to be here forever, that kind of thing. So she was all for it when I came to her with some crazy idea of moving to Manhattan to work for a little company run by a guy that she'd never heard of. So for me, it was immediately about finding happiness because I bought into that whole belief system, and I was lucky enough to discover a guy like Gary as early as I did. And I've seen that pay off over the last 6 years, and I've become a bigger believer in it. And now that I'm sort of starting to form my own platform, I'm starting to preach that to other people. But I've seen plenty of people that maybe just don't realize it or don't see it. But they're in situations where maybe it could benefit them to start thinking that way, and maybe they're just set in their ways or just don't really often think about chasing those types of things, or maybe don't really think about why they're not as happy as they would like to be.
Yeah. So for those kind of people that don't do that, I mean, I've heard, and I actually, there was a point in my life where I was one of those, as some of the listeners know, that like I was one of those guys that I didn't want to do anything. I really couldn't find, I was having a hard time finding my passion. And it started with finding inspiration and kind of creating a routine for myself to continue to move that inspiration forward, whether it was, watching YouTube videos that were inspiring and not just some crap, or, meditating or whatever it is. Do you have a ritual like that?
Not really. I mean, historically, I've been just a big consumer of online content. So like, that's something I think about a lot. Like the inspiration's out there, like you said, like YouTube, podcasts and everything like that are out there that, you could spend all day, every day just consuming things that would fire you up and get you ready and get you in the right mindset to go achieve your dreams. But I think a lot of people get caught up in the consumption part of it, and they don't get involved with like the action side of things. A lot of things come with like an actionable, here's what you need to start today to get where you want to be. And you need to have like a long-term vision and mindset to really get to those types of things, because once it starts to feel like work and it's something that you have to do every day, and it is a lot of work, that's where it loses a lot of people. It's fun to like and consume and share a piece of inspirational content. But I think that's where it ends with a lot of people. So for me, my ritual's been, finding those pockets of inspiration and taking note of those things. But in the recent months, it's really been about keeping that to a minimum and taking away from that consumption time and adding more of that to that, like the creation side of things. So I'm consuming way less content now than I was 6 months ago, and I'm creating 3 times as much as I was 6 months ago. So it's really just taking that energy that you're getting and putting it back out into the universe, because, I think a lot of people, what hinders them is, they think about, well, I'm not good on camera, or I don't like my voice sounds, or like things like that. But really you need to find your medium to tell your story, whether that's audio, video, or written word, or whatever, or drawings or paintings or anything. And, just do what is comfortable to you. I think a lot of people just get caught up in like what they're not good at, and they think that they don't have anything to teach anybody or to tell the world. And they don't realize that, like, how big the internet is and the world is. Like, there are people out there that would love to hear from a 15-year-old who's like solely talking about video games, just like there's an audience for a 43-year-old who's solely about video games. Like those two people are going to come from two very different worlds and very different perspectives. And I think people lose sight of the fact that that's valuable. Me working with a lot of big brands and companies over the years, like I have, that's given me that insight that, if a company is selling a product and they're trying to reach, teenage girls, like who better to go to than, whoever, like, than an actual like teenage girl. Like, what are they actually talking about? Like, what do they actually care about? So I think everybody has value to bring when it comes to content. And I think that's something that everyone should be doing, is creating some.
Yeah. And I've watched a few episodes of your show, with the Ascent, and was really impressed with just how candid it was. Like, your show has this really candid tone that I think too many people get caught up in their head. And like you said, they think about what they can't do, watching this show, some thoughts that cross my mind. I can't produce a show like that. Like, I can't connect with, those kind of people, with you, like knowing Gary and stuff. I'm like, I can't. But what I notice as soon as I start to actually enjoy the show, or as soon as I start to kind of get out of my own way, is it's just you having a conversation and catching awesome moments, you know? And that's a great testament to people just need to, in order to find that success, in order to find that joy, in order to find that recognition that they want, like, just enjoy the moments, you know, and get that and be able to share that with people.
Yeah. And I think you really just need to put yourself out there. Like, a lot of people ask me how much preparation I do for my, you know, my videos that I put out. And, you know, the answer is very little. Like, I look at like the week behind me and I think about like, what are the things that bubbled up and what are the thoughts that I jotted down? What are the things I'd really like to expand on and talk to people about? And you know, like 4 to 5 minutes really is all the time it takes. And I think that there's this scale that involves like, the quantity of content that you're putting out and the quality. So like ideally I would love to be pumping out content every day and I would love it to all be quality. But I think that, you know, it's important to find that balance. So, you know, I would love, there's like this right balance of, do you put out enough things into the world just to get your face out there and your name out there? Like early on, you should be putting out as much as you physically can. You obviously shouldn't put out things that you think aren't great, but you shouldn't be tied to perfection either. Like, a lot of times I'll just wing it in front of a camera for 20 or 30 minutes and then I'll look at it and I'll cut it down to 3 to 5 minutes of like the best stuff or the stuff that I feel like is actually valuable for people. And at the end of the day, if I feel like none of it really is, then I won't post it. But more often than not, I'll put it out there and I'll be surprised by what comes back as far as, you know, the things that I might not find as valuable or things that I thought I've known for a long time are the things that people are commenting on or coming back to me about that are like, wow, that's like, I never thought of it like that. Or that's an interesting thing. Like I'm going to start trying this on my own and that kind of thing. So you really just need to treat it as like a test and learn approach. I think like, you know, I'm completely content with what I'm doing and I'm happy with the results so far. So I'm completely okay with the fact that I can put out a video on YouTube and it'll only get like 20 or 60 views. Because that's part of my test and learn approach. It's like of the people who did see it or of my inner circle, my friends and family, like what feedback do they have for me? And there's no such thing as bad feedback. So you know, is there something that I could be doing?
There's no such thing as bad feedback.
Yeah, I have this one friend, Adam, who is an entrepreneur, and he left his comfortable job in New York, and he moved back home to Cleveland to start his a cold pressed juice business that's really taken off. And, you know, he came at me with a message when I first launched my vlog, and he said, I'm sending you only the negative feedback because that's all you should really care about reading. Just know that everything else that I didn't comment on is positive in my mind. And I was like, thanks a lot. That means a lot to me. Yeah. Because there's so many people out there that will, you know, especially those that are close to you, that they don't want to hurt your feelings or let you down and things like that. So they might focus on the positives of everything. But really, if you want to get better, you should have thick enough skin and be comfortable with, you know, hearing the negative first. And I think that's all part of testing and learning. You know, I think when I look back at the 8 episodes that I put out of the Ascent so far, I can watch them all straight through and I know that I've been getting better and better each time. And I think that's what people are scared of, is like starting at the very beginning and when they're not good at something and putting it out there into the world. I think if you get beyond that fear, and you're not afraid of even the negative things that can come back at you, then it's just going to be better for you in the long run, because you really need to be thinking like long term about these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to repeat what you said again, that there is no such thing as negative feedback. Like, it's really a mindset shift, right? I don't even think it's about the thick skin. It might be, but and I'm happy to know what listeners think. But I think it's just a matter of perspective. Like, if you really believe that there's no such thing as bad feedback, when you get feedback, it won't be bad. There will be nothing for you to get hung up on because it's all helping you improve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, like the feedback aspect, the thick skin aspect as well. I mean, that might be something from just my years of working with clients in the ad agency world. It's, you know, you work with some clients that are really direct with you, and to the point where it's just like you understand that this is all business and they don't mean anything by it. Like, just, you know, you come across some harsh feedback sometimes, and you can't let it get to you, because if it did, then you'd be, you know, leaving every day, you know, you'd be ending every day under your desk in tears. So, when you're in the client services industry, it's like you're going to have, good days and bad days, and you're going to have good feedback and bad feedback. And how you deal with it is, you take it all in stride. You need to keep your loftier goals and your long-term vision in mind. And you need to realize that one day or one comment or one person can't like prevent you from getting to where you want to be if you're solely focused on the end goal.
Yeah, cool. So, dude, I really want to thank you for taking the time here. I think you've shared some really awesome stuff. And I just want to ask one more question, and that's it's one that trips a lot of people up, so get ready. If you
Sure.
Yeah, of course. If money as we know it never existed, what might the world be like today?
That is a good question. I'm like an eternal optimist, so I would like to think that we would. I would like to think that we'd find a way to make it work, and that it wouldn't be drastically different than it is now. I'm also hugely into tech, so it's kind of funny to me because I've sort of been envisioning like a world without paper currency for like some time. Like I was one of those guys who I wasn't like a Bitcoin nerd or anything like that, but I was definitely paying attention when like these cryptocurrencies first started coming around, just because the idea of it is really interesting to me. Just, a world without tangible physical money, or a world where you pay, with everything using your phone or like near field communication, like devices, that type of thing. I think if money just went away altogether, I have enough belief and trust in humanity as a whole that I would think that we would be able to continue to coexist, and people would find their things that they would do. And I would like to believe that it would be much easier for people to sort of gravitate towards what makes them happy and what they're good at, which hopefully there's a lot of overlap there, because the world's going to need various things. The world's still going to need people that are farmers, and they're going to need people that are engineers and architects and teachers and things like that. So if it's something that you would have gravitated towards anyway, and the people that find joy in their life, who don't necessarily look at money or care about money in that way, and they're just happy doing what they're doing, and comfortable getting compensated what they're getting compensated, I would like to think that those people would still remain the same and be around, and they would be probably a bigger example for everyone else who would be like, well, what do I do? I think what makes that question so challenging is it's sort of open-ended, where I don't know if I'm coming into this thinking, are we in a world where there never has been money, or are we in a world where there just is no money from this point forward? Because I think people would react very differently in those two scenarios. If it's the former, and money never existed, then I think that we have a greater chance of reaching that utopia or whatever I was describing, versus if things are the way that they are currently and then they just disappeared and went away. I think there would be a period of mass chaos, and it would take forever to sort things out, because too many people wouldn't be able to see past their own stress and fear and anger around it, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. Like, it's kind of like, so just for the listeners to know, this is being recorded not even a week after the inauguration of Trump. Kind of like that, where the nation would kind of, or everybody would kind of just go up in arms, if the currency just stopped. And I intentionally leave that open because I want to see where you take it, right? That's the idea.
Yeah, I think my mind initially took it to a happier place of, this is just the way it's always been, and we've managed to get along just fine, based on just mutual respect for one another and happiness and all of that. But, you can really see, especially with current events recently, the other end of it. And I think that's something that I choose not to look at too deeply. But it's fun to think about what it could be like.
Yeah, and the first episode of the podcast here is of the Mindful Money Show was exploring what money really was, before Americanized paper currency, as you called it, kind of became a thing, right? What was or what is money? And the episode's called Trading Goats, and it just talks about, if all I had was a farm and some goats and needed a barn built, what would I do?
Mm-hmm.
So really interesting to kind of go down that with you. And I love that you took it to this sort of utopic view and trusting of people. And you seem to have a really good grasp on human nature and human thought. So it's really awesome.
Thanks, man. I really believe in people. I mean, that's another thing that I could probably credit Gary for picking up along the way. It's when you focus a lot on the news, and especially recently, it's there's a lot of negativity behind it. But when you really think about how many people there are in the world, and on a daily basis, how many things don't happen in different places that easily could, I think it's easy to discount brand human being, but I think that more often than not, you'd be surprised at how genuine and kind people actually are.
Yeah. And that's something that we as leaders and pioneering, whatever it is that we're pioneering, whether it's leadership or, success or money or whatever it is, can help encourage is this shift in media, this shift in how humans are portrayed.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something, I mean, a lot of the individuals and brands that I work with, it's something that they keep top of mind too. I mean, they want to develop real lasting relationships with their consumers because they care about lifetime value. They're not looking for like a quick buck, and they don't come to us to work with us to do that or to shift perspective on, just in the interim to like sell their product. They're looking to get their message out there and to, at the end of the day, sell their product, but do it in the right way, I'd say, more often than not.
With loyalty, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice, man. So, hey, listen, I really appreciate you spending the time with us here today. I love your perspective. I love what you're doing and how you're starting to get out there in the world now, too. I've seen, like I said, a couple of your videos, and they're really engaging. I love the style, and I think some of the listeners here will, too. So, tell us again where we can find you and how we can connect with you.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Steve Campbell. You can find me at facebook.com/realstevec. Also, that's my Instagram handle. The Ascent, you can find at theascent.biz, which is a Medium publication. Otherwise, yeah, I'm all over social media, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram. You just type in Steve Campbell, you'll probably find me.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, man. And have a good one.
You too, man. Thanks so much. This was a blast.
Yeah, no problem. You've been listening to the Mindful Money Podcast, a podcast for people who want to align their money with their values. Love this show? Head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review. Want more incredible show content? Head over to mindfulmoneypodcast.com for show notes, past episodes, and a sneak peek at what's coming next. In next week's episode of the Mindful Money Podcast.
For a lot of people, money is an end of itself. It's not. What I do in this world to make a difference is where I'm pointing, and the money is the exchange.